Anyway, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're delighted that you could be here. The Climate Action Team at the Unitarian Church is excited to continue our presentations. Just a little bit of housekeeping is we're going to be muting all with the exception, pardon me, with the exception of our presenters. And then there'll be times later on when the, pardon me,
We have our speakers co-hosting. We have Katie here is also co-hosting from CCL, and we have Betsy Johnson from Booth who's also co-hosting. So they'll all be our co-hosts for tonight.
So if during the course of the presentation, Greg wants to have you to have some feedback, then we will unmute everybody. I think you can unmute yourself for that matter. Anyway, sorry, my voice has just disappeared. So Dennis Rockwood and I'm Sharon Rockwood, and thank you all for joining once again. A couple more people are coming on now. So Betsy has agreed to introduce our speakers tonight. So Betsy Johnson, a member of the Climate Action Team, would you like to take it away?
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So Greg Weeks is our one of our speakers tonight. Greg is a semi-retired economic consultant with experience in evaluation research, environmental economics, data systems development, and performance measurement. It's like a mouthful. He earned his PhD in resource and labor economics from Washington State University, and he started his career as an economics professor and taught resource, environmental, and labor economics at several universities, most recently Evergreen State College. He has 15 years of experience in state government focusing on employment statistics, research, and performance measurement. Greg has broad consulting experience and has received numerous national and state awards. He lives in Boise with his wife and a large Bernie Doodle dog, which we'll have to hear about later. He has 2 daughters and 3 grandsons upon which he is doting. So thank you, Greg, for being our speaker tonight. And secondly, we have Katie Dietrichson, who will be assisting Greg tonight in delivering the Enroads workshop. She is a retired hydrogeologist and longtime climate advocate. She is a member of the Boise chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby and is training with the Climate Interactive webinar series to become an Enroads ambassador herself. Katie will be monitoring the Zoom chat room and answering your questions or providing them to Greg during the presentation. So if you have questions, I think we agreed that people can write their questions in the chat room. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, please.
And then Katie will monitor that and get the questions over to Greg. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, you've got waiting room, Dennis, and I will share my screen. I'd like to say also that I am, there we are. I'm also a member of the Boise Citizens Climate Lobby and have been and am engaged in training to on Enroads, and both Katie and I are actually Enroads ambassadors already. So we'll see if that proves to be the case. What I'm going to do is start with a few slides, then we'll go to the Enroads simulator, and you may want to close the participant windows to see the full screen. But I am going to start a slideshow. We're going to talk about climate change and the Enroads simulator, which simulates global climate activities in response to certain policies that we'll discuss in detail. Our agenda for tonight, we'll start with a brief introduction, do some scenarios of climate success, then have a brief debrief. And my hope is to make this as interactive as possible, given the limitations of this venue. I think if we were all in a room, it'd be a lot easier to be more interactive. But we'll do our best, and with the chat and maybe a few other innovations, we can make this work really well. So first of all, I want to thank you for your gift of time and attention as we work through this workshop. I think I want to really also emphasize how difficult this pandemic has been on all of us. We've had to make very many adjustments to our lives, and many of these changes have been quite challenging. But it also demonstrates our capacity for change and for rapid change and for enduring individual sacrifices for a greater social benefit, which I think is admirable. And what we're going to talk about tonight is the necessity to think globally, even as we may act locally. I know this is primarily a climate exercise, but I'd like to start by taking a minute to think about what we would like to see in a more ideal society. So I'm going to take a 30-second pause, and let's just think about an ideal society. Okay, I'm back. Could we share some of these characteristics through chat? What do you think would make for a better society in general? And Katie, as they come in, if you wanted to read a couple of them, we could kind of have them to keep in mind.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, I'll read some off. Healthcare for all. Enough food and shelter for everyone. Clean air and water. Mutual respect. Jobs.
Fantastic.
People that are healthy. Balanced in all dimensions.
That's a lot of dimensions. Okay, well, I'm sure there's more, and you know, I think about better equality, and both on an income basis, I am an economist, and racial and other things. So I think if we can keep some of these characteristics in mind as we really work to solve the climate crisis through this exercise. And really what we call this is multi-solving, and that is solving climate, but also seeing that it does other things for us. And this flower is our representation of this multi-solving concept, where we talk about not only helping with the climate, but also coming out of that, jobs and assets, health, well-being and safety, interpersonal connections, energy, industry and mobility, resilience, food and water, some of the things that were mentioned in the ideal society exercise. So let's try to keep that in mind as we go through this whole exercise, and it will be part of our discussion. Now some of the nitty-gritty, just a few slides here showing, first of all, atmospheric carbon dioxide. As you can see on the right, the famous hockey stick, where the blade of the hockey stick goes up above 400 in this example, and it's actually above 425 as I speak to you. So we really can see the damage we're doing to the atmosphere in terms of carbon dioxide pollution. And this results in ever increasing average mean temperatures on the planet. And the red line is sort of the smoothed line of average global temperature. And you can see that it's just steadily creeping up from about 1960 onward. Even in Boise, we see that we're the 13th fastest warming city in the US. And by 2050, the frequency of moderate risk heat stress days, a heat index over 91, will increase from a baseline of about 16 to 66 days per summer. It's getting hotter. In Treasure Valley, we'll see a moderate drought once every other year compared to one every 4 years now. An exceptional drought will occur once in every 3 or 4 years compared to more than once a decade now. And fires are to increase by 400%, increasing chronic air quality and respiratory health problems. This is a serious problem, both for the planet and even right here in River City. And I wanted to show this to sort of show where the problem lies. On the left-hand chart, you can see gas emissions by activity. You can see all transportation, truck, train, air is about 29%. Electricity generation is about 28%. All industry emissions are about 22%. Commercial and residential 12%, and agriculture in at 9%. So you can see transportation, electricity generation, and industry are really the big players in this pie chart. By country, the US is responsible for 15% of global emissions, half of China's emissions, and more than these other listed countries, the European Union, India, the Russian Federation, Japan, and the rest of the world is at 30%. Moving through this kind of fast, so chat away if you want me to slow down and further discuss any of these. We think that this bathtub is a really good sort of heuristic model of what we're talking about. Emissions are coming into the bathtub at an alarming rate, and the removals, the drain, is trickling water out. And what that means is as long as emissions exceed removals, the bathtub is getting fuller and fuller. And even if we're able to stop emissions right away, the CO2 in the atmosphere will remain for some time. So stopping emissions won't solve the problem, but it will keep the problem from getting worse over time. Does that make sense? So we might refer to the bathtub again. Now, what we're going to use in a few minutes is this Enroads simulator. And it's a simulation tool for understanding how we can achieve energy transition and climate goals through energy use, consumption, and different policies. We hope that it helps decision makers understand the implications of policies and investments based on global climate impact. This is a global model. It's not about the US, which we just saw was only 15% of all planetary emissions. But it's a model that will give us some insight, we think, about what we should be doing. And it's an effective tool for communication, presentation, and analysis. The nice thing about En-ROADS is that it's completely transparent, which is hidden on my screen. All the equations and the structure of the model are available. All the assumptions behind the model are not only available, but you can adjust them within the model. It's highly aggregated, so it does not get down into the weeds in many of these topic areas, but it's complements and is consistent with other more detailed climate models. And it's all about taking current action this decade for future impacts. And the endpoint for En-ROADS is the year 2100. And it's mainly aimed at grounding discussions for us to learn, strategize. It doesn't really give us point predictions very well, but it gives us an idea of what works, what doesn't work, what are directions we may want to go. It was put together by the Climate Interactive team, which is a institute at Massachusetts Institute of Technology School of Management. And it was developed under their sustainability initiative. It's foundation funded and is freely available online to anyone. I'll give you some addresses to go to Climate Interactive and actually play with this thing by yourself. The En-ROADS has 18 different policy levers that we can adjust. We can make coal, we can tax coal and make it less desirable or make it more desirable. Well, it's hard to make it more desirable than it is, but we can add subsidies to renewables. We can increase energy efficiency in a couple of places. We can reduce population growth. We can add a carbon price. We can decrease deforestation, decrease methane and other gases, increase afforestation. There's just lots of different directions to go with this tool, and we can see what its impact is on the planetary average temperature in the year 2100. So sort of keep this in mind. I sent out earlier, I don't know if any of you downloaded it, but this is the Climate Interactive take on that last chart. And I didn't want to go through it because, well, there's just too many words. But I think that you can go to climateinteractive.org, see up on the top, and get a copy of this and really study it and get an idea of what the simulator is about. Now I'm going to go to the simulator now, I hope. Not Zoom, but En-ROADS. And this is what it looks like. And you can see over here on the right, in 2100, the status quo, which means existing approaches to different energy supplies, different policies, different land use, carbon removal, leads us to a temperature of 4.1 degrees Celsius.
Greg,
Right? Yes.
I'm still seeing a slideshow.
Oh. You're not seeing the En-ROADS?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay.
It's okay.
Let me try this. That's what you're seeing is the debrief. Are you seeing En-ROADS user structure now? Huh. Well, this is kind of a problem.
We're seeing your PowerPoint. You need to unshare that PowerPoint and go to a browser if that's what you want to show us.
Okay. Hi. Let's see. I want to go to the browser, share my screen. Okay.
There you go.
Now do you see it?
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
Very good.
All right, thank you. Whew, I'm sweating here. An En-ROADS presentation doesn't work too well without En-ROADS. Okay, so this is the En-ROADS energy simulator. The left chart is global sources of primary energy. And you can see you have coal, oil, gas, renewables, bioenergy, nuclear, and something called new tech, which is stuck at 0 because we haven't invented it yet. And these are the trajectories of these energy sources up through 2100, given current status quo. On the right, we see greenhouse gas net emissions by gas. And we have land use, CO2. We have other carbon renewable technologies which haven't been invented yet and are also at 0. Energy CO2 is the biggest area. F gases, which are fluorinated gases that have largely replaced the chlorofluorocarbons that were taken care of in the Montreal agreement. I don't know. These are very powerful greenhouse gases. Many of them dissipate in a few years, but they're very, very powerful. Then we have methane, and methane is emitted during the production and transportation of coal, natural gas, oil. It also comes from livestock. We've heard about cows, and other agricultural practices, and also the decay of organic waste in municipal solid waste landfills. So sometimes on landfills, you'll see a methane flare. And finally, we have nitrous oxide, which is emitted during agriculture and industrial activities, combustion of fossil fuels and solid waste, and during the treatment of wastewater. So these are the main greenhouse gases on the output side of the energy sources that we see in the other chart. And the way that this works, it's very fun. Okay, that's what I think. But you could take one of these variables and change it and see what it does to the temperature. And what we could do here, let me do one thing first. And the link between the two is represented in these so-called Kaya graphs. The first one shows global population estimated to 2100, GDP per capita estimated to 2100, the energy intensity of GDP, how much energy does it take per dollar of GDP, and then the carbon intensity of that energy. We can see it looks like we're going to be getting a little bit more efficient through 2100. And then multiply all those left-hand charts together and you get the CO2 emissions from energy. And these charts sort of give us a way to think about the path of population to GDP to energy use to carbon emissions. But I'm going to go back here to our original graph. Now on the right, the chart is simply temperature change. And we'll keep it there for a while and maybe look at some others. Now thinking to your own lives, experience, and activities, are there any of these variables that, I hope not nuclear, but that you have influenced in your own life? Can you write a couple of them into the chat? Let's see. Katie, are there anything written?
Okay, let me read a few. We have population, installed home solar.
Oh, good.
What happens when we get rid of gas and oil subsidies?
Oh, yeah.
There's bike riding,
Right.
population.
Okay. Let's do a few of these, and then we'll add again. We'll ask again for some others. Population is. I was around when the book Zero Population Growth came out, so population has long been an interest of mine, and I've been interested in it with respect to climate change. And on this tool, if you hit these little dots, you can see that some of these variables have a lot of information and some have a little. This doesn't have a lot, but it assumes a 2% population growth. And that's right here in the middle of the UN scenario range. So let's take it down a little bit, all right? Let's take it down to way down to 1.7. See what that does to our temperature. We could see that it only reduced it by 0.1. So unless we get very dramatic about population, I don't think it helps. But it's far from a silver bullet. What else do we have? Solar. Solar would be electrification of buildings and industry. Would be an instance of electrification of buildings or an industry. Buildings and industry is obviously more than putting solar on your house. But let's look at these 3 dots. And here we see use of electricity instead of fuel like oil or gas in buildings, appliance heating systems, and other machines, using electric motors. This is electricity from low carbon sources like solar and wind. So this kind of does that. What do you think will happen to these energy sources if we increase electrification of buildings and industries? Just sort of think about that in your mind. Do you think coal will go up or down, or renewables up or down, or oil, the red line, up or down? And we're going to increase electrification quite a bit to right here. And we can see we have the capacity to look at that. That really didn't change our temperature very much. It changed the Fahrenheit by 1/10. But you can see that what happens is coal comes down quite a bit. Paradoxically, renewables come down and oil goes up as we electrify buildings. So I'm not sure. Let's start it a little later. See, we can play around with this and make different assumptions and just sort of see what happens. Let's see, what else do we want to do? Coal. Somebody mentioned get rid of the coal and oil subsidies. Right here in the middle would be letting the market work normally. And look what happens if we get rid of the subsidies on coal. The brown line comes way down. Oil is unchanged. Gas goes up a little bit as a substitute, but it really hits coal hard to get rid of those subsidies. And look, it reduces our temperature by 0.2. So that was impactful. Our goal, I don't think I mentioned it, our goal is to get down to 2 degrees increase, and 1.5 would be even better. So we've got a ways to go. Let's go ahead.
Oh, I'd like to, oh, go ahead. Okay,
Katie?
I'd like to see all fossil fuels left in the ground, as some of the other climate groups are advocating, and stop using fossil fuels. So I'd like to see all the subsidies taken away and put a carbon price on all of the fossil fuels.
Okay. Okay, so to take away the subsidies on oil, we go right to the middle here. Boom. Take away the subsidies on natural gas. We go right to the middle here. There it is. How about methane? Okay. So what we've done is we've pushed all of these to the middle, and now we're going to go to a carbon price. And what we want to do is to look at a price on carbon at its source that will generate a price on the resulting goods that's more commensurate with its actual cost to society. So let's put a carbon price, say there, and see what that does. That gets us down to 2.5. Is that what it is? I have a little screen problem. So that's all of that is very, very impactful. It brings us down to 2.5. What do you see about the energy pattern? It really changes in favor of renewables. Oil goes down, coal goes way down, gas goes down. All of the fossil fuels go down because we've taken away the subsidies on all of the fossil fuels. Let's see, what else did we want to do? We need some more.
We can look at efficiency increases.
Okay, let's look at energy efficiency on transport.
Well, also for buildings and gas furnaces.
Okay, we'll start with that. Energy efficiency for buildings includes things like building well-insulated homes, reducing energy factory use. Energy efficient practices can save money through energy needs. So let's push this up to about 3% a year. That seems doable to me. Of course, I'm pretty optimistic. And that brings us down to 2.4%. And if we go to energy efficiency in transport, that could do a little bit more, and that would be more efficient buses and trains, airplanes. We're down to 2.3.
We'd also like to look at carbon removal, like planting trees, afforestation.
Afforestation, right. And we can plant a lot of trees, medium growth. Let's say to go to high growth and just plant a lot of trees. You know, Boise's the tree city, so we are into afforestation. And so we're going to plant trees. We're going to plant as fast growing trees as possible. It's going to suck carbon out of the air and add oxygen. It's just a good thing. We ought to also, as a companion to that, reduce deforestation. And we're down to 2.1. And I want to change back to that slide I showed a little while ago. Because this starts to get really interesting here. You can see that we've reduced carbon, energy, CO2 a lot. We've reduced methane a lot. We've reduced really all of these a lot, except I can't tell on the nitrous oxide. But look at the trees, the afforestation is taking us below zero. We're actually sucking carbon out of the air with the trees that we've planted. We're down to 2.1 degrees. What else do we want to do? What if we subsidize renewables? Let's just subsidize wind and solar a little bit. That increased renewables didn't really change much else. Let's look and see what the change was. But, oops, there we go. Let's actually be a little more active and take methane out of the air, or make methane, get rid of leaks, use eat more plants, and really highly reduce our methane emissions. Methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. And that gets us down to 2. Anything else that you want to do?
We have electrification of cars.
Oh yeah, I drive an electric car. I should have thought of that. So if we electrify cars here, if we highly incentivize electric cars, we get down to 1.9 degrees Celsius, 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see that almost all of our energy is renewable under this scheme. And it really becomes, we've done a lot to reduce the future temperature of the planet. We could, reduce economic growth. We could play around with this a lot, but just look at this, what we've done. We've reduced subsidies to coal, oil, and natural gas. We've put on a pretty substantial carbon price. We've subsidized renewables. We've increased energy efficiency in both transportation and buildings. We've electrified transportation and buildings. We've managed to reduce population growth. We've reduced deforestation. We've planted a lot of trees. We've reduced our emissions of methane. We're down to 1.9%, which is below the goal that Climate Interactive sets for this exercise. Anything else that you want to do here? We could be, you could get tax coal and oil and natural gas instead of just leave it at the middle of the range. All right. Let's look at.
Can we look at new technologies or biochar and other carbon removal?
Yes. If we put in, let's write. New technologies are being developed. Whether they're successful or not is a matter of, is uncertain. Let's just say it's uncertain. But biochar and carbon capture and direct air capture, there are a lot of alternative approaches to net carbon dioxide removal, which is simply doing what having us develop processes that do what trees do naturally. And if we did this, the model suggests that it really won't hit the streets, even if it starts now, until it takes a little while to get up to speed, and then it increases over time until 2100, and it reduces. They project that it would reduce warming by 0.1 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good given all the other things that we do. The other thing I might mention is that the order in which you do these things matters. A carbon price by itself is probably the most single impactful thing, but when you combine it with other energy efficiency and electrification and subsidizing renewables and reducing subsidies for coal, oil, and natural gas, it becomes even more powerful. And so we really look at these things in an order and see what the overall effect is. Okay. I'm going to move on. I'm going to give you the keys to the car at the end of the presentation so that you can go to this tool and play around with it yourself. One of the things that I've noticed from this, as a Citizens Climate Lobby member of some length of time, I was walking around talking about a carbon fee and dividend as the silver bullet for climate change. And after playing with this tool for quite a bit of time, it occurs to me that, as they say in Climate Interactive, there is no silver bullet. Really what we need are what they call silver buckshot. That is a whole lot of things being done by a whole lot of people in a whole lot of places in order to really get a handle on this climate problem. So I'm going to try to go back to my PowerPoint. I hope it works. Are we back there?
Not yet.
Ah,
Maybe stop sharing.
yeah, I have to stop sharing.
There you go.
Screen share, and then do this. You see it?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, just that easy. And this was all the levers that we had. And I want, how come it doesn't? Okay. I have to do that. I'm sorry. This is user error. Okay, so here's the deal. We got to 1.8 degrees. And I think we should be proud of ourselves because that's not an easy goal to achieve. So I want to wish you a congratulations. And I want you all to go hip, hip, hooray right now.
Yeah,
Hip, hip, hooray!
Hooray.
We did it. And
Yes.
we did it by pushing a lot of different levers. So I want you to think about back on the Climate Interactive Enroads screen, think about the changes that we've made. You know, we put in a price. We reduced coal, oil, natural gas, methane, increased electrification, increased efficiency. Think about something that you would love about being part of this sort of a future. And please write some of it into the chat. Excuse me. Okay. And now I'm going to ask you to stop writing into the chat and let's just take 1 minute of silence to reflect, to think about this whole experience of fixing the climate, at least the climate represented by En-ROADS. So let's start thinking about that now. Okay, my watch says that's been a minute. And I want you to think about what surprised you, what were your key insights, what will you take away from today?
A couple things in the chat are feeling positive and excited about things getting better.
Okay.
Not having my tax dollars go to being part of the problem, as in subsidies, cleaner air.
Yeah. And I think that whenever I do this, I come away from this exercise with a renewed determination, optimism, and really a lot of hopefulness. There's so many things we can all do, and we all must do to address this problem. And I think that what this simulator shows me is that there's so many dimensions that we can work on. You know, call our senators, call your representatives, talk to state reps. Let's let's make this an important part of what they hear from constituents every day. And I think we really have a lot of different insights from this particular simulation. And this sort of ripples, pebble in the pond with ripples, moves out from individuals to our social networks, to the organizations to which we belong, to the general public, to cultural changes. It's amazing the change in attitudes that we have seen in just recent years about climate, and how in the US, it's become one of the most important policy areas, issues of concern, areas of concern for people, and the proportions just keep growing. So I feel like as an individual, sometimes you may feel powerless, but you're not. You're really not. There's a lot we can do. So I'd like to open it up for any final comments that you may have through chat via Katie, or just unmute yourself, I guess, if you want to.
One of the things in the chat is the surprise that population didn't have more impact, changing population growth. And also in the chat, a response that population is growing fastest in the developing world, where people have a lower carbon footprint than in the developed world. And so this is a global model looking at the carbon footprint worldwide.
Right.
And so population may not be the same as we think about in the United States or Europe, let's say.
That's right. And, a child born in the Western world has the prospects of adding a lot more carbon than a child born in the developing world. So,
Another comment is that the slider ranges have limits that imply lots of assumptions.
Right. Right. And the assumptions are embedded in the simulation model, but we can adjust quite a few of them, both in the slider under those 3 dots, and also there's places in the model, I didn't go there, where some of the assumptions are listed and can be modified. But yes, assumptions are important. If we didn't limit what we do by assumption, it'd be very difficult to come up with a tool.
Yeah, okay.
All right, well.
Katie and and Greg, I've just unmuted everybody. There's a few people that probably have themselves muted. So you might start getting some questions here.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
After this, if any questions or feedback or concerns or suggestions occur to you, please send them to boiseclimate@gmail.com.
I have a question.
All right.
What about all these new developments with black roofs, heating up in the day and sending heat off into the atmosphere at night?
Well, I don't really know. Is it a matter of building efficiency?
No, it's a matter of choice. Of people like a black roof. They don't need to have a black roof on a house or an apartment, but they put them on there because they say people like it.
I see.
And I think it's adding to the heat island that towns make.
That makes sense. And I don't know much, I haven't given it much thought other than your comment, but it makes sense that black roofs absorb heat and then emit them at night. So I think I have a black roof now that I think about it.
Well, I've mentioned it to the planning and zoning and to the city council personally at the meetings. And they haven't given it much thought either. But I think that it's something we ought to make us think about.
Okay.
So another question or comment in the chat is to explain when was Enroads developed, and then how widespread is its exposure, and has it been accepted?
Okay. Enroads was released late last year to the public. The Climate Interactive team has been doing presentations all over the world to Congress, to the European Union, in I think every continent. There's been literally thousands of presentations of the Enroads simulator around the world. And the idea is to get people thinking in this way in terms of systems and make it a lot more widespread, that there's a lot of things we need to do and there's a lot of things that we can do. On Climate Interactive, there's a map. I don't know if I can, probably a mistake to go there and try to find it, that has a dot for every presentation, and it's worldwide.
Mm.
Greg and Katie, thank you so much for this. This is Scott. Have you presented to any of Idaho's politicians?
No, not yet. This pandemic thing kind of threw us for a loop.
Yeah.
We had, it's very different presenting over Zoom, where I see no audience reactions at all. Of course, I assume that they're all wonderful reactions, but I'm not sure that that's always the case. But it's very different, and it's kind of thrown us for a loop. Our intent, there's interest on the part of Citizens Climate Lobby, regional leaders. There's a lot of interest in getting some of these workshops. We're doing one on, two of them actually, on the 18th to the Boise Climate Coalition folks. So we're trying to get this out there as much as we can.
Are there any other questions for Greg about the En-ROADS or presentation tonight? Greg and Katie, we would like to thank you both for the time you've taken to make the presentation and tonight, and we really appreciate the amount of time you've personally invested into becoming an ambassador for the En-ROADS presentation. We know that others in the Citizens Climate Lobby here in Boise have done the same, and it's really laudable. We really appreciate it. So thumbs up for our presenters, or clapping hands or something like that. I'm not sure. Zoom is a little limited, isn't it?
Well, we just want to thank you for your time and attention. And please go to climateinteractive.org. Look at the En-ROADS simulator yourself. Become a Climate En-ROADS ambassador yourself. Take the training. It's fun and interesting.
Well, Greg, I also want to thank you because I believe that you've given our church's CAP team some action items, as well as our whole entire community with what your presentation has shown us. And we really thank you for that. This is going to be good.
To wrap up tonight, I'd just like to give a little plug for the next presentation that's part of the Climate Action Team's Earth Month. And it's going to be next Wednesday, May 13th. And Ty Benoit, a member of BOOF, is going to be presenting Climate Realities in the Age of COVID-19. Ty is a trained presenter of Climate Realities, which was begun by Al Gore a number of years ago, and has prepared a presentation specifically for BOOF and for this particular time in history that we are seeing the pandemic. So that's next Wednesday, the 13th of May, and at the same time, and you'll be able to see the link at the Boof website. It's boiseuu.org, Earth Month 2020. So you can find the day and time and then the Zoom ID number to join the presentation.
Yeah, it's going to be an excellent presentation, particularly based on the groundwork that we've just heard from Greg and what he's doing with Enroads. There's also another one coming up on the 20th of March, which is the following Wednesday. And I believe you can go online to see this show before then. And I really encourage that. And that is Hike the Divide, a conversation about climate action because this individual walked the trail from Canada down to Mexico. And he's the one who produced the film. And he's the one who also was going to do the Q&A afterwards. It's excellent conversations that he had along the way on this trip.
So you go download the documentary, watch it yourself,
Yeah.
and then we have the filmmaker with us
Yeah.
on the 20th, Wednesday the 20th.
That's right.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, stay
Yeah,
well,
thank you.
everybody. Thank you so
Sharon?
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Will you send out the information for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
great.
one more thing. We've also recorded this, so we'll see how that works. It should go to Boof and then be on YouTube, according to what Sarah's given the information for us. So all I need to do is stop recording, I guess, and then things start happening. So.
Okay, I want to put one plug in before we leave.
Sure.
And that is one of the most important things you can do for climate is to talk. Talk about it with your family, with your friends, with whoever you come in contact with. Keep the conversation going. The more people talk about it, the more people will be involved. And then the second thing is to vote. We have an election coming up. It's very important that we vote climate. That's it.
Amen to that.
Okay, thanks everybody for showing up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah, you
Bye.
got it.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Greg, very much. Well, off you went.
Charisse? Oh, she's gone. Charisse, are you there? No.
Okay.